What's up, guys? Readiness Reviews here with you again. And I just got back home from going to a gun show today, and I actually had quite a haul, and so I figured I'd make a short little video to show you guys what I picked up at the gun show, and make sure to stick around until the end of the video because I'm going to go over the current military surplus market in general. So I live in Georgia, and in Georgia, the biggest gun shows that happen are R&K shows. There's one in my area about every quarter, and I always try to go to that. I missed the last one that was in May, and so luckily I made it to this one that was in August. And I had good luck at these gun shows because there are so many tables set up and so many vendors that you have a much higher chance of running across something that's fairly interesting and worth adding to the collection. I usually walk through the entire show and kind of keep things in my mind, or I'm going to go back and check that. I'm going to see if I can make a deal on that. You know, that was interesting. I'm going to check that again without blowing my whole budget as soon as I get there. After my first skim of the show, I knew I wanted these three guns that we're going to be looking at today. The first gun that I picked up is one that I've wanted in my collection ever since I very first started, and that is a Russian SKS. Russian SKSs are extremely expensive these days. It's not uncommon to see one going at auction for like $1,000, which is absolutely ridiculous because when I started collecting, Russian SKSs were like $400, $350 sometimes. But this is the quintessential SKS, the SKS that started it all. My particular rifle is in outstanding condition. It is a Arsenal refurbished Tula 1951. It still has the original sling. It does have the folding blade bayonet, cleaning rod, and there is actually a cleaning kit in the buttstock. All the numbers on the rifle appear to be matching except for on the magazine, and that has an electro pencil marking where it was force matched. I really wish I would have bit the bullet earlier on in my collecting career and bought a Russian SKS when they were far less expensive. But I think I still did decent on this one. They were actually being sold by a gun store at the gun show on consignment. They were asking $750 for it. And at that price point of $750, I knew I was walking out of the gun show with this rifle today. But I thought maybe I can get him to take it down just a little bit more. And so I offered the guy $700. And he said since they are on consignment that he needed to get at least $700 for the person he was selling them for. And he came back with a counter offer of $725. So that particular gun store could make $25 on the transaction. Needless to say, I accepted that offer, and so I have come home with a Russian SKS finally. He did tell me a little bit about the previous owner of this firearm. He said that it was a Georgia State Patrolman, and he had several of that guy's guns on consignment there at the gun show selling them. Of those guns that were on consignment, this was the only one that interested me. And man, I am super happy about finally having a Russian SKS in the collection. So generally, somewhere in that price point of like $700 is about as much as I'm willing to spend at a gun show. But before I made it to the Russian SKS, I spotted these other two on the other side of the show. Usually at a gun show, the people there are willing to make a deal. And if they have two firearms that you're thinking about purchasing, a lot of times they'll cut off a good deal of money on the price to buy more than one at a time. So for the second seller, I picked up a nice handy little carbine, Steyr M95/30. This is a Mannlicher Steyr straight pull action, but this particular rifle was converted to a carbine pattern from a full-length 1895 long rifle, and you can tell that because of the rear sight here is a full-sized rifle sight. A purpose-built carbine will have a short carbine sight. I already have one of those in my collection, and I'll post a video right here of a full-length M95 rifle that I have a previous video on. But this was a cool little gap in the collection to fill, a converted M95-30. This rifle is also in really nice condition for the price I paid for it. I got a very good deal on this, I think. So the guy I bought this one from was asking $275, which is already a good price for these rifles in the current market. Royal Tiger Imports is selling M95s right now for $350, and those are in garbage condition for the most part. So the prospect of adding an M95 to the collection at this point for less than $300 was already very intriguing to me. But then again, I thought maybe I could get him to take it down just a little bit. So I offered him $225. And again, he came back with a counter offer saying that he needed at least $250 for it. I capitulated and said, all right, let's do the paperwork. And he pulled out the 4473 and we started filling it out. Now, he saw me eyeballing another rifle that he had, and that was this Mass 36-51. Now, he had a hefty price tag on this rifle of $850. And that was too much for my blood. Now, I thought about offering him less on it, but I'd already spent enough this day. I bought the SKS, and now I was buying this M95 carbine. At that point, I was already like $1,000 in the hole, basically. I really didn't want to spend any more, but he saw me looking at it. He knew that I wanted it, and he said, I will cut you a deal if you buy both of those rifles. He said if you wanted to take them both off my hands, I would give them to you for $950. And I thought about it for just a minute, looked in my wallet, I was like, how much cash do I have left? Can I make this deal happen? I really want that Mass 36. And as it turned out, I had just enough money to cover it. And I told him, yep, I'll do it. Let's do the deal on both. So I ended up getting both of these rifles for a total of $950. That brings the cost on the Mass 36 down to $725, which is a much more reasonable price point in my opinion. I got the Steyr M95 at my first offered amount of $225, and so I'm extremely happy about that. This Mass 36 was still expensive in my opinion, but the condition of this one is outstanding. It is essentially in perfect condition. The park rising is excellent. The bore is mirror bright. It is all numbers matching. Still has the original sling. The spike bayonet is included, and it has this awesome grenade launching hardware attached to it, and any rifle with a grenade launcher is super cool in my opinion. I was a little bit concerned about the stock on this particular rifle, and not because it looks bad, it's because it looks too good. So the stock is like absolutely in beautiful condition, and I have a feeling it might have been sanded and refinished at some point, but I really don't know. So if you guys know more about Mass stocks, let me know down in the comments. It seems to be sort of unfinished. In my experience, they're usually a little bit more glossy than this. This is very matte and very smooth. It does still have the military acceptance stamp on it, but it is a little bit light. So I'm thinking maybe this stock has been sanded on a little bit, but I really don't know because when you look at it, it doesn't have any rounded edges. Everything is nice and square. The wood is still very proud of the metal. So if it was sanded, it was very light. It almost appears just to be unfinished. Now, the Mass 36 was, of course, France's new military bolt action to take the place of the long-lived Lebel and Berthier rifles in World War II. Post-World War II, they decided to update the rifle to fire standard NATO 22mm rifle grenades, and that is what makes this a Mass 36-51, the 51 designating that it is a grenade launching rifle. This is the first Mass 36 in my collection, so I still want a World War II Mass 36 at some point. To have this one knocked off the list is a big check mark in my opinion, and I couldn't have asked for a better example of a rifle. We will be doing individual videos on each of these rifles at some point in the future. But for now, I thought it would just be kind of cool to share my story of how I came about them at the gun show and to give you guys a quick look at what we might be checking out in the future. Now, this gun show that I attended today was a wake-up call for how ridiculous the surplus market is getting in the U.S. I don't know how it is in the rest of the country, but here in Georgia, in the southern United States, it is crazy. There were plenty of Milsurp guns there, but the prices were astronomical. There were several tables with infields, both number 1 infields and number 4 infields. The lowest cost infield that I saw in the whole show was $600. It wasn't anything just a year or two ago to run across a number 1 infield for $400 or less, easy. And they're all $600 plus now. There were several Santa Fe jungle carbines, which are a sporterized number 1 rifle, basically. They wanted like $600 for those. This was at more than one booth. On separate sides of the show, very similar pricing. Lugers were all $1,000 plus, even non-matching, refinished Luger pistols. But that's pretty standard for the market in general right now. Radom Viz pistols were like $1,300, $1,400. In the past, you could run across those for sub $1,000 all day long. Of course, all the modern firearms were pretty ridiculous. The AR-15s, just standard models that would usually be like $500, maybe $600 were all a couple $100 more than that. We're talking $750, $800 for standard ARs. Modern handguns were normal prices. Glocks at this point are coming in $600, something like that. Everything has gone up in price due to the world that we're living in at this point and the prospect of future firearms legislation, banning things, regulating things. That compounded with the uncertainty of the political situation in general and the whole global economic thing going on, it has really pushed the firearms market to levels that I never thought it would reach, especially with surplus firearms. They had one K98 in the entire show, and it was a Russian capture, and they wanted $1,200 for it. Last year, I passed up on a Russian K98 capture for $600, and I'm kicking myself for not jumping all over that one now. So I really don't know where the whole surplus market is going at this point. I mean, it's becoming very difficult to be a firearms collector, and I would hate to be someone trying to get into the market for the first time right now. It is just so cost prohibitive at this point. When I first started collecting 12 years ago or so, things were cheap. Mosin Nagants were $100. These Steyr straight pull rifles, they were $100. You could fill your safe up for $1,000, and now you're lucky to run across an M9130 Mosin Nagant for like $400. And the worst thing about it is, I don't see it getting any better. Even if we did have a whole political flip and all this talk of gun control went out the window, which it is absolutely not going anywhere, I really don't see the collector market having any changes in price. Now, maybe if the whole country goes through a big economic recession or maybe even a depression, that would cause some people to unload their collections, driving the price down temporarily. But the fact of the matter is, these rifles are not being made anymore. With simple supply and demand, the prices are only going to go up in the future. So if there's something that you've been eyeballing, something you've been thinking about adding to your collection, even if it's a little bit more than you would want to spend for it because what you've seen it for in the past, this is a hole that I fall down a lot. It's better to just go ahead and buy it. Because at this point, every firearm I've ever purchased is worth more now than what it was at the point that I bought it. And since I'm not planning on flipping anything right now, I'm looking at collecting for years and years to come. I only see these prices getting higher. Well, I think I've rambled enough for this video, guys. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. That helps us out with the Google algorithm. And everyone knows gun channels need all the help they can get with that algorithm. Google is not a fan of firearms in general. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for future military surplus firearms content. Let me know what you thought about these three rifles down in the comments. Do you own any of these three? And did I pay way too much for these, or did I get a decent deal? I don't know. Let me know down in the comments. Be sure to stay tuned to the channel to see the individual videos on each of these rifles, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.